I'm Deontay Jenkins, and here's what's on my mind. Tension, storytelling, Django. Let's break it down. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you like this video or anything that I'm doing here, make sure you give this video a like. You can check out some of the other things I'm doing here on this channel, including my latest short film here. And now that that's out of the way, tension. How do you create tension in a movie? Well, it starts with the story. You have to be building towards a tense moment in a story, meaning you have to start low and build up to something high. Now today we're going to take Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained and use that as an example of how to create tension. So this scene comes about 2/3 of the way through the film. By this time, we already know that Django's wife, Broomhilda, is a slave at Calvin Candy's Candyland. And we also know that Django and Schultz have come to rescue her from Candyland. And they plan on rescuing her by claiming to want to purchase a Mandingo fighter. Now we've also established our antagonists, that being Calvin Candy and Steven. Most importantly though, we've established how nasty and evil Calvin Candy can be, as well as how much of a bootlicker Steven is. So that brings us to this scene. We the audience know the tension that is building. We know what's at stake, that being Broomhilda's freedom and Django and Schultz's life. And we know that we're just this close to their plan working. And that's when this happens. We enter on a wonderful dinner party set up by Calvin Candy. Django and Schultz still have their gimmick going of being Mandingo purchasers. Since knowing Calvin Candy, Django has been given an unprecedented amount of leniency with the way he speaks to him.
Samson the champion. Them other two pretty good.
Calvin, how much this nigga you like?
It's alright, it's alright.
Calvin Candy has seemed to be okay with it, but Steven has not. So, Steven already has an issue with a black man having this kind of status. So he already has it out for Django. But so far, so good. Now watch this moment.
Nothing more than just a big nigga.
This is an early hint of what is to come. We see that Broomhilda and Django can't keep their eyes off of each other. And through the use of close-ups, Quentin Tarantino tells us that not only are these two lovers excited, but they can't hold back their excitement and keep up the clever ruse that they have going on. Now pay attention to this. Steven is framed on the right side of Calvin Candy. Flip yourself around, is Calvin Candy's right side. He is Calvin Candy's right-hand man. He listens to him. Notice how Steven is always saying something into Calvin Candy's ear.
Need to have what?
Panache.
The way Steven is framed shows his influence on Calvin Candy. He's his right-hand man, his confidant. Calvin Candy trusts Steven and holds him up high, which is why he's framed right next to him and in a position of power. But also pay attention to how, thus far in the scene, Schultz is the main focus of his shots. Now notice that Tarantino is keeping the scene very light. The characters are cracking jokes. The edits are very quick. Now there are 19 cuts in the span of a minute from the time that Schultz calls Broomhilda over to pour him a drink, and when Calvin Candy's sister makes the remark that Broomhilda might have a crush on Django. Now this is done deliberately. From a story perspective, Schultz is still in character. He's still trying to give this ruse of a Mandingo buyer. He's trying to keep the mood light. Now our relationship with the director is telling us that this scene is light with quick cuts, quick edits. We're not lingering too long on any particular shot. We're keeping things moving, keeping things snappy. But interestingly enough, the final two quick shots are of Django and Broomhilda. Now these two quick cuts do the opposite of what the other quick cuts do. They remind the audience of exactly how much danger our protagonists are in. And they sort of snap us out of that moment of lightheartedness and back to reality. Not only does it do that for us, but it does it for Steven.
You are quite the dapper European gentleman.
If these two quick cuts were done from anyone's perspective, it would be Steven's. This is when he notices that there's something deeper going on with this relationship between Broomhilda and Django. And that's when his suspicions start to arrive and he confronts Broomhilda and she swears that she doesn't know Django.
I don't know him.
Back in the dining room, this is when the focus shifts to Django. As I mentioned before, all of Schultz's shots were focused on him. But as you'll notice, shots become two shots between Django and Schultz. And the reverse is a two shot between Candy and Steven. But still managing to keep the ruse up, trying to keep the negotiations between him and Candy, which is shown here in a series of close-ups of the two of them. But then we cut to this shot. Notice the framing of this shot. Hildy is very dominant in this frame. Our eye is drawn to her before it is to Candy. Again, this is deliberate composition. This is establishing that the focus of the scene is shifting, and this shot moves from dominantly on Hildy to Django. It's luring the audience into a false sense of comfort that everything is okay. But there's something else that I want you to notice through this entire scene: the lack of music, but not the lack of rhythm. I'm not talking about the rhythm of the cuts nor the rhythm of the dialogue, but the rhythm of this clock. Now, what do we think when we think of a clock? We think of time, correct? Why is this clock so loud? Why can we hear it so prominently in all rooms during this scene? This is Tarantino telling us that it's only a matter of time before something happens. The sound of the clicking clock gets in the back of our minds and provokes anxiety. And that matter of time happens right now. And notice again the two-shot that Django and Schultz is in. Remember, the focus has shifted from the Mandingo fighters to Django and Hildy. Tarantino is visually telling us what to pay attention to. Even here, when Schultz is speaking, the focus is on Django. And the tension is pushed even further with this slow push-in.
I haven't.
You see how Django and Hildy are positioned in similar areas of the frame? That is, again, intentional composition. It's showing their unity of embarrassment and anger, which is also in unity with the audience. Everything is done to make us feel. The composition of this image shows that Hildy is the most important part of it. They're parading her around and showing her scars. Remember the quick cuts when we had the close-ups of Django and Hildy? Those close-ups were foreshadowing something. We see a close-up of Hildy and Django again. Only this time the cuts are much slower. And this is where the tension really starts to build.
He is a man of medicine. I'm sure it would fascinate him to...
Just like they couldn't hold back the emotion of the excitement that they were feeling, they can barely hold back the emotion of the anger and embarrassment that they're feeling. Going from these wider shots to these close-ups of Django's face, Hildy's face, and Hildy's back puts the audience right in that tense moment. We feel those same feelings that they're feeling. But more importantly, we feel the boiling tension about to erupt. The most important part of tension is it needs to be released. And in this case, the release is Calvin Candy's sister stopping him from parading Hildy's back around like some sort of messed up painting.
Calvin!
And visually we're released by going back to a wider shot, but the tension is still there. It's just a brief moment of release that we're allowed. Then we get this close-up of Steven. This close-up is only important to the audience. Why do we need to see Steven's face? Well, because of the seeds that have been planted beforehand. We already know Steven has an issue with Django. We already know that Steven has had, in this scene, suspicions of the relationship between Django and Hildy. And now, through the audience's dread, through this close-up, his suspicions are being confirmed. If you notice, every time the tension is being pushed further, it's being done so through close-ups. Watch, here the tension is building further, here even further. Here the tension is at its breaking point. And finally, the tension is released. And it's released by giving us a wide shot. Now our heroes are in trouble. Quentin Tarantino is taking his cinematic language and manipulating the audience to feel exactly what he wants them to feel when he wants them to feel it. So next time you're watching a scene and you feel any kind of emotion at all, ask yourself, how did the filmmakers get us to this point? Is there a sound that gets you there? Do the edits get you there? Is it a type of shot that gets you there? Having an analytical eye towards a film is going to help you understand the cinematic language better. Pay attention to how you feel. Pay attention to what's happening and how it's being presented. If you watch this scene from start to finish, you'll see a master taking you on a ride and showing you exactly how to tell a story to your audience. Watch this scene and I guarantee it'll help you figure out just how to build tension. But then again, what do I know? Thanks again for watching, guys. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Make sure you drop a comment down below if you have anything you want me to do a video on. Be sure to keep telling stories, and I'll see you next time. Peace.